I'm not going to use the microphone because that would be ridiculously loud. Well, lovely people that have ever presented in such a nice manner. This is fantastic. There we are. Thank you for coming. My name is Paul. What do I do? I'm not a stand-up comedian. This may look like a 90 minutes of comedy. It's not a one-man routine. There's quite a lot of work from you on the table to help make this work better. So what do I ordinarily do? I'm a coach and a trainer, a scrum coach and a scrum trainer, made in the UK. This is a session that I dreamt up a while ago now. And it is called Can Laughing at Our Problems Actually Help Us Solve Them? This all stemmed from a blog post that I read a long time ago now, probably 18 months ago now, by a man called Steve Andreas. I apologise for the black background of the slides, which isn't really working very well with the amount of light we have in here, but hopefully, can you read that from the back? Yeah. Okay. Steve Andreas is a neuro-linguistic programming author. There's a book and revised by and he made reference to a really interesting blog post talking about how jokes and the art of telling a good joke involves what he calls reframing. And the art of the science behind that, if you like, is that when we hear the punchline to a joke, it normally changes our frame of reference to what we thought we were going to get. Hence, that's what makes it funny. It brings a reaction that we didn't quite expect. And he talks about that from a scientific point of view, from a brain programming point of view. And he makes an interesting analogy that the same thought processes go on when you solve a really difficult problem. The same switching goes on in the brain. So, hello. Nice to see you. And then different jokes there. Okay. We're just going to change projectors. I'll just keep talking. So yeah, it was an interesting blog post. He talks about how the punchlines can help change our frame of reference. So I thought it was really interesting. How can I use that? Because I'm really a huge fan of making work a fun environment. I think we've kind of lost that. We're so focused on delivery a lot, and Jeff has talked about this a lot this morning. And how can you make play? How can you put play back into how your team work? And when they can play together, they'll really start to produce some stuff. So I was really quite keen on how can I use this as a session, as a talk, to get people thinking about these things. So I basically want to test in the next, I think about 90 minutes. I want to test Steve Andreas' theory, with you today. So we're going to do a number of different exercises. And I'm going to try, as best I can, to introduce an element of humour into what you're doing. Right? So it's a huge gamble, right, that you have a similar sense of humour to me. And you may not. Probably won't actually, but I'll do my best. But we are going to test this theory, and first thing, I'm going to give myself some data, some baseline data. On your tables, there are some little sticky dots, which hopefully each table's got some. All I want you to do now is each of you grab one of those each. And I want you to think to yourself now, just for yourself, if you were going to score yourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, on how creative you feel right now at this moment, what would you give yourself a number between 1 and 10? 1 is really not very creative, you're still in bed. But 10 is you've never felt more innovative and creative. You're going to create the next best thing when you walk out this room. You're really probably there already. Give yourself a score between 1 and 10. When you've got that number, come and put that little sticky dot on the number anywhere on this sheet here. But there's a kind of up-down rating here, 0 to 10. Give yourself a score. Stick it on that bit of paper somewhere. everyone have a chance. The colour of your dot is not important, right? But it gives us an idea. In no way can I, if you can see that, in no way can I interpret it that quickly, but varied, I think you say. Right, the highest we've got, someone really doesn't believe they're at 10 already. I'm impressed with this person, I want to meet this person now. Whereas the lowest we are quite clearly, someone's actually written on that dot number 1 there, so it gives us a fair idea. Someone who thought they were 10 has written 7 on it, so maybe they're playing a joke, I don't want to go with stuff. No, just a rough indication. And I will test that theory again at the end of the session. We'll do a similar exercise to see if there's any graphical improvement. That's just the main way I test this theory. So, we're going to test your creative problem solving now. First, it was something, we give you an abstract example, a completely fictional example. So here's the first one. So this is so imagine now, this is a runaway train. Right? This is actually a picture of a freight train there. And here is some information for you. The train is carrying 250 tons of a highly toxic chemical. All right? And the train throttle is jammed at 120 miles per hour. I'm not sure what that is in kilometers an hour, but it's fast. Right? All you need to know. The train, and hence, because it's going so fast, it's not safe for that train to turn fast corners quickly. And we know that the track that train is currently on runs out, expires at a major inland city station in 2 hours' time. However, it will take any engineers either on the train or put on the train, will take them 3 hours, estimated, to solve the throttle problem while the train's moving. So, just literally fire it out there now. What would you, if you were given the task of solve this problem for us, what's the first thing you think of? What would you do? Unhinge the carrot. So that's the first, usually very logical explanation. And then we'll let the engine carry on, but at least we'll slow down the chemicals. So maybe the engine will hit, but at least then we're not exposing people to these dangerous gases. We could evacuate the station. Any ideas?
Dump the fuel.
Dump the fuel, maybe to slow the engine down as well. Good, very good. I want to stop you there because we'll start to get into the kind of creative problem solving now. And what I found was when you give people these types of problems, but if you were in your scrum team, you give people these types of problems, they'll probably think about the problem in a very one-dimensional way. They'll probably maybe apply previous knowledge or some kind of reference data as to how they've done similar problems before. They might have seen a film. There was a film, actually, which is very similar to this, starring Denzel Washington. I think, I can't remember the name of the film, but it's a similar type of example with a train with a truck is jammed. And I draw reference here to this man, who you'll all recognise, came up with two quotes, one of which is more famous than the other. The one people have mostly heard of is this one, where significant problems that we have cannot be solved with the same level of thinking with which we create them. And that is so true in our industry, in the software industry. Right? The problems that we have now, or the problems that we will have tomorrow, we will not know how to solve, because things will have changed by then. So we have to be able to apply different levels of thinking to solve them more creatively. I like that quote, but not as much as I like another quote that I found that he said, which I think is even better. And he said, if at first the idea is not absurd, then there is no hope for it. Right? He's even suggesting you've got to think outside the box, the classic cliche, but think about the whole thing differently and think of a crazy idea and start there. And that, again, this is the theory now, Einstein's theory that I'm going to test. So, does anyone recognise this man? Again, I apologise for the lighting in the rooms and helping you out here. Any Americans amongst you might recognise this man?
Phil Jackson.
Phil Jackson, thank you, Adam. Phil Jackson, if you haven't heard of him before, he's a very famous, now retired NBA basketball coach. Famously coached the Chicago Bulls in the 90s and later on the LA Lakers. There's a pattern is if Phil Jackson coached you, you did pretty well in the NBA. All right? He produced a lot of very successful teams in the last 20 years. Now retired, but I was reading a lot about Phil Jackson as a coach. Because I'm a Scrum Master myself, and I've got a lot of Scrum Master experience. And I say, Scrum Masters got to be great coaches. What can Scrum Masters learn from Phil Jackson? Actually, they can learn quite a lot. Because Phil Jackson is a very alternative coach in terms of sports coaching. In the NBA especially, where you won't really see Phil Jackson standing at the side of the court shouting at his players. He's going to be sitting down for the whole game, which is quite different to how a lot of sports coaches in that kind of arena work. He's a very passive coach, he's a very calm, very spiritual man. And I was reading a lot about how the coaching techniques that he used with his Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers. And one of them he uses after a game, after maybe they've had a game where they've been beaten. Phil Jackson would bring the players in on the next training session that morning, and he would play them a video. He'd roll a TV out or some kind of screen projector, and he would play them maybe just 15 minutes from a clip from a film, or from an advert on television, or a television program, just something, some kind of stimulus. And this is what Jeff was talking about this morning about abstraction. This was Phil Jackson's way of showing the team something completely outside of basketball. And then he said, so how does that help us? What does that tell us about what we did in the game yesterday? As a different way of helping the more creative process start within a team. It's a form of abstraction. And that in itself is what Steve Andreas was talking about with reframing. It's a reframing activity, putting the brain in a different place, and then making some kind of connection with that abstraction to what we're here to discuss. So I'm going to attempt that now. I'm going to use a little bit of reframing, a little bit of Phil Jackson's techniques. I'm going to play you a short video clip. It's only a couple of minutes long. And then we're going to go back to this runaway train problem. So hopefully if this is all wired up, we've got some sound. Hopefully it's not too loud. So I'm starting to try and establish a sense of humour level that we have in the room. There was a few probably sympathetic sniggers there for me. But there is a serious intent behind it. So that is a form of abstraction with a little bit of humour involved. Right? So I'll put your brain down in a different place. And now I want you to go back to the runaway train problem. Right? But I want you to attack it from this person's perspective. Right? So you saw Wiley Coyote in that film. A very creative person themselves. And I want you on your tables, someone on your tables, to open envelope A. It's exciting. Envelope on your table. Someone open envelope A. I apologise, it's not money. It looks like there's money inside, but it's not money. All there are, there should be 7 cards inside your envelope. If someone just count them out, feels like a magic trick. I think I'm trying to outdo Jeff. Got 7 cards. I forgot to hand out Sharpie. I'll bring out some pens in a minute as well. But what I want you to do now is think of 7 different solutions for the runaway train problem that this character would come up with. So write each one on a different card. Alright, I'll give you 5 minutes or so to do that. 7 different solutions for the runaway train.
It was 2 hours before it got to What was the idea? I was thinking another set, you build another set of tracks.
So we need to you might have to carry on. Wonder so there's no more sitting. Placing self in front of eventually you'll crash, but you'll try.
Build a bridge
That's not existing.
Set up like a bungee cord in front of the tracks. Train like inside.
When you use the cards, it's not you've got 7 different options. Still going here, got 5. You've got 7.
We need more cards.
You've got 7. Yeah. Okay.
Like parachutes.
7. Within there.
You can pair with someone else today.
I did bring it up.
We have 7. Happy? Everyone's got 7 now, I think, right? 7 it is. So there is a logic, right? It wasn't a random number, there's a logic to why I actually do 7. And this is a technique that I've heard about. I can't say I was there, but it's from a conference I was at back in Amsterdam. Actually a strong gathering. And it was a story I heard from teams in Boeing, the aircraft company, their product development teams have a rule of 7. Right, so when they are tasked with solving the next problem that those teams would be moving on to, before they decide what they're going to do, they have to come up with 7 different options. It's their rule of 7, and all the teams have it. And it's deliberately put in place to diverge their thinking, right, diversify their ideas. And what you generally found, they found within Bowen as well, is that ideas 1, 2, and 3 were pretty logical. Right? So that happened when you saw those, when I asked you the runaway train problem at the beginning of the session, someone said decouple the train, drain up the fuel. Logical, those are ideas 1, 2, and 3. And what they did find then was after ideas 1, 2, and 3, it took a bit longer to get ideas 4 and 5, maybe 6, and it took a really long time to get idea number 7, right? And that's when your brain is really trying to exercise different ways about solving this problem, some of which might be completely fictional, right, at this point. I agree in this example, they're probably all fictional, maybe. But only really at that stage do you start to get to the really crazy ideas that Einstein was talking about. What they found was, every now and again, that 7th idea, which in Bowen's terms normally included some kind of flying carpet, something like that. But there was something, there was the seed of something, maybe something that we added back to idea number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, that made idea 3 or 4 a better idea, that we hadn't thought of already. And that's what creativity is sometimes. It's actually taking 2 things, not just 1 idea, but 2 ideas and making a better one as a result by sticking them together. So this rule of 7 is quite a nice way to do it, and that's why I do it here. Interesting enough, what was your 7th idea? Let's see which was the wacky. Does anyone want to read those out? Anyone want to read wacky set? Can you remember what your 7th was? What was your 7th?
Bubblegum on the tracks.
Bubblegum. So in terms of trying to slow the train down, stickiness. Yeah. Anyone else?
Stuff the red onions, the petrol tanks,
So it seems silly, but if this was a genuine problem, there might be something we can put, which isn't a roadrunner, that we can actually put into the fuel tank to absorb that fuel instead of draining it. Maybe there's some way of absorbing it rather than draining off. Good. Any other different ones? Wacky ones?
Build a bridge over the station.
Sorry?
Build a bridge over the station.
Build a bridge. Just literally add more track.
Yeah.
There's a great, I don't know if any of you have seen Wallace and Gromit. Is that you've seen Wallace and Gromit? They can't remember which film it was. When they're building tracks and Gromit is in front building the track ahead of the train, that kind of idea. It's completely wacky, but there might be something there to build.
Send a bigger train from the city.
Send a bigger train and hit it. Yeah, very good. Yes. Or destruction, but there might be something in there. It's an interesting thought. Hold on to that. Because now what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the second video. Slightly longer than the first. But again, back to this Phil Jackson idea, show you now a different video. I'm going to put your brains in a different place. Hopefully if it works.
You know, I have one simple request, and that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads. Now, evidently, my cycloptic colleague informs me that that can't be done. Can you remind me what I pay you people for? Honestly, throw me a bone here. What do we have? Seagulls. Right.
They are mutant seals.
Really? Are they intemperate?
Absolutely.
That's a start.
Okay, slightly more like, so again, I'm getting an appreciation for your sense of humour, similar to mine in that respect. The film obviously was Lost in Power, the original, and best. Mike Myers there playing Dr. Evil. So now I want to open envelope B. Open envelope B, somewhere on the table. And I'm really, no surprises, there's just another 7 cards. It's not money this time, it really is just 7 cards. So now we're going to do the exercise again, but with a different persona, different perspective. What would Dr. Evil be trying to do in the runaway train situation? This person would probably not try and solve the problem. He would want to ensure disaster, right? So I now want you to think of 7 different ways that you could increase the chances of a massive disaster, right? Maybe you can speed the train up. and maximise devastation and casualties, right? You're trying to make this an even bigger, a worse situation. I want you to think about the opposite to solving it. Does that make sense? But I want you to think of 7 different reasons to do that, 7 different solutions to do that. 7 different ways to maximise disaster on 7 different fronts.
Big concept of minus organize a flash mob. Freeze, kill thousands.
Big bang,
Do you get a quick show of hands when you've got 7? Anyone got 7 yet? Just go ahead.
You're right. It needs lasers.
Bounce lasers. Settings.
Yes. Use lasers to cut through trains.
You guys are helping. It's like going the extra mile.
Get rid of the engineering.
Shots to the leg. What is it?
Anyone? Just give me a show of hands if you've got 7. Just so I know if you've got 7. Anyone here, Karen?
No, I think we,
Just
is
one
there
more.
7?
One more? Okay, we'll wait for you.
One more. We're writing it down now. So you can say yes.
To the nuclear power.
Yes. Okay, we're done.
Done? Okay, so, interestingly, so that's, did any of you find that harder?
Yeah.
Yes.
No? Hands up if you, generally, be honest, if you found that much easier.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. It's amazing, I've done this a number of times, it's amazing how many times people naturally find it easier to think about all the bad things that could happen, right? In some respects, how to make sure it's screwed up. I have to say, it's normally the boys. I'm sorry. It's a man thing.
No, it's comments. I generally run a process of making strategies. So how do you make a fair strategy?
Yes.
Because I find when people come up with what's not going to work,
Mm.
it's usually the most extraordinary starting point for somewhere.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I'm going to mention here, is that it's a well-known technique. I've heard it called things like reverse brainstorming.
Did you call that strategies?
It's a strategy.
Strategy, like that. Strategy is good. And it's, sometimes it's just about getting things started, right? If you're throwing people into rooms to solve this really difficult problem, you're normally going to be you get silence back. And sometimes it's just about getting the flow of ideas coming. And they can be wrong ideas. And in fact, especially, I'm sorry, the boys amongst us, it comes back to back in the playground where you like to break things, boys breaking up Lego and things like that. We naturally find it easier to tear something apart rather than build it. So don't ignore that. In fact, there's a way you can harness it, all right, by doing this type of thing, getting those bad ideas out the window first. Sometimes you can look at the reverse of the bad idea. Go back through your list of 7 that you've just come up with. Are there any that you could reverse to make them into a positive? Is there any that you can look back and say, actually, if we did the opposite of this, that's a solution we hadn't thought of? Is there Okay. So, guys, just come back to me. Was there anything that came out of that kind of reverse solution that you would actually think you'd go for? Any examples? Anyone want to give us an example?
We had put a rocket on the back to speed the train up. We thought we could have a rocket go the other way to provide some reverse.
Literally reverse it, and that wasn't an idea you came up with in the first round of 7?
No.
Okay. Any other examples?
We wanted a shoe style, and first we need to go to styles of shoe style outside.
Right, exactly. So, and it's an interesting thing. The worst thing you could probably do, and some of you might have written this down as something Dr. E would do, we're trying to increase panic. We increase the level of panic, because generally panic it disorientates people and it slows people down. So you've got to create an incentive outside of the station here to try and draw people naturally in a calm way out of the station. It's not going to be great to run into the station and say, there's a train going to hit, you're all going to die. It's not going to work. So you've got a calm way of trying to, and if you kind of evacuate the station, it gives you different ideas about that. So the other stories I've read about this as reverse brainstorming strategy. That's good. Is I think Speedo, so you've heard of the swimwear manufacturer Speedo use this as ideas. They think of all the ways that you would slow down swimmers as they move through the water, right? And then they look at the opposites of those. So they talk about things that slow swimmers down are big goggles, right? So in fact we want to reduce goggle size rather than increase it. And swimwear that's too tight would actually decrease your ability, your speed through the water, because then you get fat bulges over your swimmer. So they're trying not to make it too tight, so it fits your skin better and that kind of thing. So it's interesting, and I find this a really interesting technique to use, where you find teams that really just struggle to get any ideas out on the table at all. All right, and this is a good way of starting with the ball rolling. So where was I going to go with this? As any of you, it links quite well to De Bono. Anyone heard of De Bono's 6 thinking hats? Read about that? It's just kind of a short book. I think it's quite old now. In the 80s it was actually published. But this, I found that it's linked in quite well to creativity and kind of teams helping to build on that. By using these characters, as I've just done, actually each one of them would kind of lend themselves to one of De Bono's hats. And I got mixed up when I first read about the bonus hats. I thought his secret, his suggestion was that a good team should have like a cross-function, and it should have one of everyone. And I kind of got a bit mixed up, but from reading a bit more about it, he's suggesting that a good collaborative team, in many senses, will go through stages of problem solving by putting each hat on one at a time, a stage at a time. So this encourages people to not mix up too many different emotions in one go. So he talks about like a white hat thinking. The whole team would literally, metaphorically, put on their white hat. And a white hat approach is literally you're trying to find out information. You're asking questions around data. So how fast is the train going? How many people are in the station? What time is the train going to hit? What types of chemicals are on the train? That type of thing. How much fuel is in the tank? To get information out. And then we can literally, metaphorically, take off our white hats and put on a different colour hat. And maybe then talk about more of our emotional state. So, what's going to happen? What to people if they actually? What are the consequences to people's health if the chemicals get into the atmosphere? Those type of things. We'll start thinking about a bit more of the emotion out of it. And we can look at a more optimistic view. What's the best possible scenario here? And talk about in terms of what's the ideal would be. How many people can we safely get out of the station? What's the safe distance? Black hat is an interesting one. This is perhaps a more natural hat for some people to wear. A black hat is very much a cautious approach. And you'll probably be able to see these people in your teams. And they feel like they're being negative when you're trying to come up with solve different problems. But in fact, it's just that they're quite conservative and quite cautious. And sometimes it's nice for the whole team to think like that. So what are we going to be careful of here? What are the dangers here? Not trying to be negative, just trying to point out the dangers. This is the wily cozy hat, the green one, the creative one. Right, we're trying to think about all the different possibilities that we can have to solve this. And the blue hat is more of a facilitatory hat, a planning hat, trying to stitch those things together. What can we make from those different data? So it does lend itself quite well. What I'm going to try now is a different exercise again. It involves envelope C. And this one really does feel like money, but it really isn't money. I think I've got enough for everyone. I'll hand these around. Someone on that team could open them. Yeah, right. And within that, hopefully, we've done this right. There's some hat cards. So you should have each of the 6 de Bono hats. So lay those out on the table. And you've also got some comedy characters. Okay? So what I want you to do on your teams, if some of them you might not recognise, these characters you might not know, some of them you may, try and fit where you think that persona lies in terms of are they data? Are they very emotional? Are they quite happy? Are they quite optimistic people? Try and allocate those characters to the hats as best you can. We'll see what we go with. Yes, you would. You would suggest whatever. Talk about the kind of things you're looking for on white hat. Making a standard question. Very similar. Yeah. I think this could be good.
Inspector Gadget. Optimistic.
And it's
He's quite happy to
Okay, so I'll stop you there. I am very aware that I take a bit of a punt. I try and pick cartoon characters or characters that people are vaguely familiar with. I can't expect that you will know every one of those cards. I don't expect you to. And what you would do if you were doing this with your team, which I have done this with teams, you have to pick characters that all the team can relate to, obviously. And I try and do this in that respect. So if we can commonly associate someone as one of these characters as wearing one of these hats, we can all, it gives us a sense of abstraction to allow us to think how that person would think about this problem. What would this person do? What would Homer Simpson do right now if Homer was here? Can anyone see any applications of this exercise in their teams? For forcing you to abstract now. How could you use this? Testing you out. This kind of using cartoon characters with these 6 ideas. Any ideas?
generate creativity maybe?
Or a new way of thinking.
A new way of thinking. I've used this in some basically I've used this a lot with testers, right? And I've know testers that will think about testing strategies from character perspectives, right? So using personas and things like that. how would Homer Simpson break this piece of software? What would he do? And I have to think a little bit differently. And I've known of one team that's gone, just one team did this, but they went so far as to create masks for some of these characters, not all of them. And they would, in some meetings, it's usually just one person would put on the mask to always have that person in mind when they were either planning their sprint or talking about what to do next, designing this solution, that sort of thing. But it was quite a nice way for them. And some people find it easier to speak more freely from behind a mask. This was amazing that we saw this. There's one really quiet guy in a team, but as soon as he put one of these masks on, you couldn't shut him up. He did just talk. But because he was talking from behind the mask, he felt like he wasn't saying anything. It was very, very strange. I'm sure there's something scientific about it. Giving people a sense of a different voice through characters can actually be quite useful in some respect. But again, if you want to do this type of stuff, you really have to find some characters that all your team can relate to. So I just gave you some examples here as to how I did the Simpsons characters. I think you've mainly got a lot of Simpsons characters. Did you have a standout white hat Simpson character? Lisa? I didn't have Lisa. I didn't have Lisa. Oh, okay, yeah, I had. Smithers.
Sorry.
You had Smithers. You had Smithers. So I always think of Smithers as someone who's very much quite analytical and just provides Mr. Burns. I'm speaking to Simpsons fans here, but just provides Mr. Burns with with what's good, data in terms of what's going on. Was there a standout red hat emotional person in the Simpsons that you thought of?
Homer.
I had Homer as well, I think. But just literally quite survives on his gut instinct. Says what he thinks, says it, calls it out, says it as it is. A yellow hat Simpsons character? Bart. I had Flanders as well. Always looking at what's the best, looks for the best in everything, the best situations that can come out of it. Was there a black cat? I think I had Lisa as my black cat.
Yeah.
You had Lisa as more of a black cat person. Quite scientific in terms of analyses and quite calculating, quite careful. Green hat was probably the easiest one for me. Green hat. Bart, anything have Bart? And blue hat I had as Marge. So someone who kind of brings it all together and kind of the conscience of the past. But there we go. That's an exercise. If you decide to use it, you can tailor it to however you want. Right? People quite like to be able to put those hats in more in terms of people they can relate to. So the second part, we're quite literally halfway through, but the second part of my session today around creativity and kind of humour, getting back to the humour side of things, comes from maybe an evening. One of the downsides of working as a consultant, I suppose, as I do a lot, is spending a lot of nights away alone, looking for sympathy now. But luckily, when you get to work in big cities like London, especially, you get to go to places like this. So I used to frequent the Comedy Store. Have any of you ever been to somewhere called the Comedy Store in London? Yeah. A very famous, well-known, been around for years, Comedy Store that runs shows every night of the week. I thought, great. I'm fed up going to the cinema, I'm fed up with table for one in the hotel, I'll go out and go to the Comedy Store. And I happened to go there on a Wednesday night, one night. And I was lucky enough to see on a Wednesday night, every Wednesday, terrible photos, you can't really see very well, but there's a group of performers on stage and they were called the Comedy Store Players. And they're quite famous in terms of, there's one famous face. Any of you can see a famous face amongst those? Mike Myers this is Mike Myers, this is Austin Powers. Right. He doesn't perform every week, I have to say, he doesn't live in London anymore. But he and Neil Malarkey, the two guys on the left, the far left, created this group. They're a group of improvisation actors. Right? So they appear on stage in the Comedy Store every week. And they've been around for 25 years, maybe even longer now. But they were founded by these two guys. And they basically run every Wednesday and Sunday. They turn up for 2 hours on stage with no script. And they just survive, and they make stories up on the back of what the audience suggests to them. That's the basics of improvisational theatre. They respond to suggestions from the audience, and they create, and they make people laugh continually for 2 hours. And I spent many a happy night in the comedy store watching these guys. And the more I watched them, the more I thought, you know, what they're doing is very similar to what I have to do, or what I'm trying to encourage people to do. And what I started to read about and what I researched was the foundations of improvisational acting come from raw collaboration. And what these guys have managed to do is take collaboration to a level whereby they can respond to the audience and respond from the interaction, and the humour that they generate allows them to be more creative. And I thought that was fascinating. They've got just complete free realm to create anything, but they respond to what the audience responded to, which was quite interesting to see. So the second part of this talk is mainly around collaboration, which is it's kind of a throwaway term that we all need to collaborate. But until I started to watch these guys on stage, I thought, actually, I was interpreting collaboration as something different to what these guys did. And it was quite astounding when you actually get into the grips of it. So I apologise now, but I feel that I'm far enough into a 90-minute session that you won't walk out at this point. It's too obvious, and I've got you in the room for 45 minutes. But we can. I'm basically going to try a few simple improvisation activities with you, and you're going to do some in pairs and partners, so it's not too embarrassing on teamwork. But all I say, obviously, you don't have to do this, but go with it if you want to have some fun. But for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to try a little bit out. And there's a great quote. People think, well, I can't do this because I'm not very creative or I'm not very imaginative. But for the next 45 minutes, imagine that you are imaginative. All right? And this will become easier. And you might generally be quite surprised as to how these and these are all techniques. I guarantee I'm not making this stuff up. Everything that I'll show you now, I've done with scrum teams. And you think, my team's going to hate this. And trust me, some teams like it, some teams find it quite uncomfortable, but every team that I've tried it with has had some benefit from doing these activities. Or maybe there's something you can see that you might want to take inside of this way. But let's have a go. I will need a few volunteers. I have to be honest. It is a little bit of audience participation at this point. But does anyone feel come up in front, my friends? Give a round of applause as we go. My name is David. Nice to meet you. Thank you. So me and David are going to play a little game now called Gift Box, and David's got a bit of a head start here because you're going to do this again and again when you've seen us do it. This is very simple, David. All you have to do is hold an imaginary box. Right? It's going to be quite heavy, so be prepared. So it's an imaginary box, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take objects out of your imaginary box. And all I want you to do when you see the object, and in mind object, is just verify and say yes, of course it is. Right? Of course it's, and repeat what I say. Right? That's all we're going to do. You guys pay attention because you're going to be doing this. So this is a clipboard.
Yes, of course it's a clipboard.
Yes, very good. And this is a typewriter.
Yes, of course it's a typewriter.
It's an old-fashioned one. And here is a little mouse.
Yes, of course it's a little mouse.
And here is a mouse trap.
Yes, of
I
course it's a mouse.
won't put it too close to that. And here is a large, a 6-foot ladder.
Yes, of course it's a 6-foot
And here
ladder.
is a birthday cake.
Oh yes, of course it's a birthday cake.
And here is a tarantula.
Yes, of course it's a tarantula.
Very good. And we're going to carry on doing that, and you're going to have a chance to listen to it. Well done, David. Right there, right. David, we're going to get the chance for them to take I take the box off David and he can chance. So find a partner is the first thing we do. Hopefully there's an even number else. Find yourself a partner. Stand up. I want you to stand up for this. What if you hold the box? I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes what you see. That's all I want you to do. Just comments, then I'll shout at you. Inability, they feel very quite insular about, I can't be creative, I'm not a creative person, I can't do it. Because people take it too personally. Right? And in fact, creativity probably comes from people in your team rather than yourself. And this is why I use this exercise. It's really great for explaining to a person who's really struggling to contribute or to add some ideas in. It's not necessarily your problem here. And that's what the role of that person on the box is so good for. You get so much value from just the word yes. Right? Of course it is. It's not a silly idea. Of course it's interaction. Right? What else could it be? And that is quite literally how improvisation works on stage, is that you never refuse anything. And the reason why people usually find it so hard to be creative is because they've been so used to their idea, or they're scared of their idea being shot down. Right? Now sometimes I'll do this as a fun activity for a couple of people, or in partners like that, at the start of a sprint planning exercise, just to say anything goes for this next 4 hours. Right? Start now, start thinking now. Get everyone's voice in that room, right? Just in that respect. But it's actually, so Jeff talked about this morning, a yes and approach. A yes and we can do this. It's a collaborative approach that is literally the building blocks for improvisational comedy, improvisational theatre. It won't work. And collaboration, I didn't realise, it just won't work until you have yes and we can do this. And I was talking, I think, to Cara last night at dinner, saying you can extend this game even further. What you can say is, what I like about the object you just brought out, what I like about this is it's furry, it's a bit scary. And perhaps we can do this as well. And what's in the box next? So you're giving loads of different opportunities now for someone who feels they're not too creative to respond to and to build on top of. So it's so powerful, those two words, yes and. But it's integral to collaboration of any sort. Collaboration doesn't just happen by sitting people around a table, right, or around a desk. A lot of managers think that it does. We're a collaborative company, we collaborate with our staff. No, you don't, right? Because they're probably not, they don't understand this company. But it's quite interesting. So I learned a lot from these guys at the Comedy Store and seeing on stage, and their ability to just think of avenues that the story can go down is just fantastic. And I had the privilege of going on a little workshop as well, and I spoke quite a lot to this Neil Malarkey, one of the Comedy Store players, the founder of the group. And he talks a lot about something called an offer. And from reading more about this is from an author called Keith Johnson. Keith Johnson is kind of written the major literature really on improvisation in theatre sense. And Keith and Neil talk about offers as the basic, the primary unit of currency for any collaborative team. So they talk about it from a theatre perspective, but the same applies to what we do. Right? You need these things called offers. So in an improvisational sense, what they would do is they would call out to the audience, give us an environment where two people may meet. And someone might shout out hospital. Right? So you've got two actors on stage, no script, and then one of them would say to the other one, "Good morning, doctor," right? And the other one would say, "Good morning, nurse," right? So there are two offers, straight out, in just 4 words, that have established, we've accepted where we are, we're quite clearly in a hospital now, and we've established 2 characters, and we've also established the time of day, right, from those 2 things. 2 offers. And you notice that the second actor didn't say, I'll come to it later, but he didn't refuse the offer, see what I mean? He accepted it and said, yes, we are, you're a doctor, I'm a nurse, here we are, what we're going to do. And you start to build a scene from that. And that's the basics of something called offer. So what I'm going to get you to, again, to appreciate this now. I want a different volunteer now, I want to volunteer for a different exercise. Go on then, Freya. Round of applause for Freya. Go on to the front. So, myself and Freya, we're going to act out, we're going to do some mime now, Freya. Okay, so just to demonstrate what an offer is, I'm going to mime an object, alright, and then I'm going to ask Freya to interact with my object by miming something with it as well, okay? And if we've got a mutual understanding that we've mimed the same object, we can shake hands and we're done, we're all good. We've accepted the offer. Make sense? You ready for this, Freya? Okay, here we go. Let's see what happens. So, I'm just going to wind, okay, so you need to see what I do. So, just mime with that imaginary object in a way that you think we can do something with it. Okay, that's good. I think we're there. Very good. Thank you very much for that. Did we see what Freya did?
Wait for someone to
Did you see what she was doing? I certainly noticed that kind of motion. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Was that were you cleaning the window, Freya? What were you doing?
Waiting.
You were waving at someone. You were waving. Because I saw that as cleaning. That's because I was doing a house up at home. So you're waving to someone and you were looking around as well. You see someone else behind that person. So we established what the object was, which was a window, correct? So my offer was a window, and Freya then did something with it to establish to do a window, and we kind of went with a window object. I've had people misinterpret offers. That does sometimes happen. Some people sometimes think that this is a car, a trunk or a car boot. The back, it's a big trunk of a car. If you can look around inside like that. I've had people think that it's a treasure chest. Again, why you do that inside a treasure chest? But you just got to go with it, whatever it is. But the idea is that you try and form some kind of relationship or some kind of understanding with your partner to what the offer actually is. If you do agree, you can shake hands and you're done. So again, 2 minutes. Have a go with your partners again. Somebody mime an object, create the offer, and then the other person interact with the offer in some way. And then if you both agree with it, you can shake hands and sit down again. You're done. Have a quick understanding.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Can you do that again?
I didn't really do anything.
Sit down again. Did any of you not shake hands? Was there any misinterpretation of offer? Can you tell us about it? What happened? What you...
Yeah, I think we had a football game and we did shake hands and then we switched around and she chose the audience. I think I was still stuck in it.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. So, a good quote as well from Mike Myers himself. Mike Myers is one of the best improvisers I've seen him do it. But he talks a lot about specifics, right? He actually said it's all about specifics, right? So with a good mind, a good example, you've got to be quite specific about what it is to allow it, in which it becomes a better offer, right? So giving details, giving sizings, giving, I saw some people stepping into objects and almost sizing them out, interacting with several parts of the car. I saw that happening quite a lot. Making it quite clear as to what it is you're doing. That allows your actor next to your partner to make an easier offer on them. But that's the basics. And again, in teams, I just use this exercise to make sure you understand what it is we're looking for, what we need to provide to each other to help this workshop work, what an offer is. Slightly different take on this now. Again, all these games I've stolen from the comedy store, and I did show them that. Again, I need a slightly different volunteer for this one. All audience participation from now on, I'm afraid. Anyone want to volunteer for this? Okay. Come on, friends. Applause for this man. Is that right, Neil? Yeah. Nice to meet you. I'm Paul. So now Neil and I are going to play a game called Delight. Right. So this is, you'll see what's going on with this. We are going to tell a story together. Right. This is an unscripted story that Neil and I are going to make up on the spot. But unfortunately, you can only interact with the story by saying the word no. Simple enough, right? You good at that? All right. Okay. Right. So basically, we're going to tell a story together. We're going to make the story work, make it interesting for everyone. But you can only contribute by saying no. All right. So, and then we'll see how it goes. So, this is a story about the time that Neil and I were on holiday together. No. We went for a walk together. We went for a walk, and it was a beautiful day. It was a rainy day. It was pouring with rain, and it was, in fact, we were wading through water. No, it was just light rain. It was just a slight drizzle. I had an umbrella, which was okay. Yeah, I had an umbrella, but it was a quite small umbrella. No, there were large umbrellas. So we both, but it was fine. So we were both dry. It was amazing. We hadn't really dressed for it, so that was fine. So we were walking along, beautiful scenery around us, and we saw something in the distance. We didn't see anything. Mist everywhere. We couldn't see anything. We couldn't see the hand in front of our face. So we walked wading around, and it was getting dark. It was no. It was a beautiful midsummer's day. It was bizarre. The weather conditions bizarre, but we had the misfortune of treading something. And it was wet, and it was dry. And I pushed it with my foot, and it scattered all over the path. And Neil went down to pick it up, and he found a little speck of lemon. He couldn't find anything. And then the person walked up to us, and they said, Neil, where are you going? Where are you two going? And we said we were going to the pub. No, we weren't going to the pub. We were going to the beach. We're going to the beach surfing. Yes, straight. We're going to the beach surfing, but we can't find it because of all this mist. We have to go to the beach. And this man looks at us quite strangely, and he said, You're in the wrong place. There's no sea here. No, you're in the right place. You just got to go this way. You've got to go around the beach. And the moral of the story is, if you ever do out for a walk with Neil, and it's misty, just take a map. Artwork. Tell me what do you see? What was going on? Tell me what you saw. So this is a bit of a Phil Jackson reframing exercise now I'm doing here. In terms of tell me what you saw.
Completely accepted the no.
I completely accepted the no. I had to, right? Because that was the only thing that Neil could do, was just say no. So what did I have to do? I had to pivot on the nose. And how did I do that? Sometimes opposites. Did we ever get multiple no's? I kind of lost track. Was there anything that I said as an alternative and Neil didn't like that either? No. But I had to react, right? I had to provide something else. It got quite negative. That's because the two boys involved, obviously, quite negative. Yeah?
Well, I find it seems very difficult to do in the first place. And in the second place, you have to be very much attuned, because you have to be listening very carefully to where you're going with it. Easy no, with that stuff.
So there's different degrees of no as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a kind of no, which kind of means you're close to what I want, but you're not quite right. Or there's a no, that's quite a no. I'm a long way now from the way it used to be. How does this apply to Scrum? There is an application. How does this apply to Scrum?
I think it's just start to try and tell people what they want to hear instead of what they should hear.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're not very good at doing this, right? In terms of we're not very good at providing options. That's what I always find. You must. Can you think of people in your teams that are just no people? But sometimes when we get no people, we either accept it or we kind of push them to the side. Sometimes no can be a positive, right? because I had to then find something else. Have you ever had a product owner that's just no all the time? Have you been to a sprint review and the product owner goes, no! No, looks at the software and goes, no! Right? And then usually it's defensive teams go, oh, teams panic and we think we stress. But sometimes that can be a positive. And the thing you've got to try and harness is the ability to say, well, what can we do now? How about this? How about this? How about this? What about these things? Do you like that? Do you like that? Do you like this? And providing different options. But it can, the whole word no can be a huge stopper for any type of collaboration or creativity. But if it's used, and I think this is something that Neil Malarkey said to me, is that a great collaborator knows how to turn what he calls a block. So Neil was giving me blocks. And no is a classic block word. So to give you an example in a theatre sense, you know with that hospital scene? Good morning, doctor. The block would be, I'm not a doctor. Right. So I'm refusing the offer, and I'm almost stopping the story. But a great collaborator will then be able to say, well, I'm not a nurse. Because they're great. We can walk around the hospital and nobody knows who we are. So a great collaborator knows how to take the block and transform it into an offer. So in your teams as well, you've got to be able to, as a scrum master especially, you've got to be able to spot the blocks and help the team turn it back into an offer. That's a real skill. Yeah?
I would imagine that you might have had a vision of where the story was going, and you, like in the block, had to come up with an alternative. So
yes.
In the Scrum scene or scenario, the team could have a different vision to the product owner. This allows a reset.
Yes.
So from that, it's quite positive.
And it's great. That's the type of thing you've got to establish very early, isn't it?
Yeah.
And an acceptance that we don't know and we're willing to go with where it needs to go. You'll get some team that say, no, we can't do it like that. That's rubbish. The product owner is wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And say that we know best. Right? But in Scrum terms, it said, no, the product owner is responsible for knowing where this product goes. And we've got to be able to respond to it, and it will emerge as we get there. But we can hear as we get towards it. I'm conscious of time. There's a couple more things that I want to do before we wrap up. Again, they're just great collaboration games. And some of these now you may have heard. But the classic one is one-word storytelling. Okay? And yeah, we'll demonstrate this very quickly. We've got 50 minutes or so. I need, let's say, 4 volunteers. 4 different volunteers. Sound want to come up? Front, 3, 4, come on. 4 volunteers. Give them a round of applause. So we're going to demonstrate this very quickly. It's very simple. You are now, all 4 of you are going to tell us the story. That has to make sense. And it has to be interesting. The only downside is you can only tell it 1 word at a time. Right? So we start 1 word at a time, and when the moon comes to the end, we do it back around to the start. We keep in that kind of idea. You happy with that? So you can only say 1 word at a time. To make it easier, I'm going to kind of give you a scenario and start it off for you. But we want to. You've got an audience now. You've got to keep them interested, and the story's got to flow. It's got to have kind of logical flow. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll go back to 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll see how the story emerges.
Do we have to repeat what we're asking?
No, so you literally just 1 word at a time, and then hopefully if we say nice and close to the it should make sense. So I'll start the story off. The story is going to start with the words, the day we went to the airport. Alright, so there are your first 6 words, and the 7th word will carry on from that. Does that make sense? So you want to start us off?
Goddard.
Oh.
It has to be
Amazing. Because
we ran
into a disaster.
I'll just stop you there. Just stop it. It's very good. So, did you notice what happened? Tell us what happened there. There were 3 words that came out. Do you know why that might have been?
Going with the flow.
Because it established the flow, and it's almost like you know in your own head where you want it to go. Right? So again, this is a great game for limiting. You just only say 1 word, and you might have to give up where it actually goes in the end. So sorry, I've lost your flow. I won't do it again.
You too.
Wall.
And
Disaster.
Imminent.
Johnny
Walked.
Barefoot.
Because.
he
Did not.
Keep going.
Glass.
Glass.
and
In.
Jumped.
upwards.
Unto.
Skyscraper.
She
Superwoman.
Was.
Amazing.
magician.
Okay, we'll stop you there. I'm going to ask the audience. Where do you want the story to go? Give them something to work from. Where do you want? What do you want? You've got one character or two characters. I think you're in. Johnny and Anne.
Romantic.
That's more.
Give them something you'd like to hear more of in this.
Got a rescue.
A dog.
A rescue. We need a rescue.
Should we try from the other side and then
Just start again.
go from the
You
side?
can do it if you want to.
Okay, so I'll start with the other side. They
Left.
Fishing.
That's
Snuggle.
A.
Midnight.
movie
Lane.
Two.
airports.
Ladies.
Okay, we'll stop there. Give them a round of applause.
Snuggle, baby.
What, so the audience, what did you see going on? Tell me a bit more about that. What did you see? Any interesting parts? We had to change it. It took, like I said before, has to emerge, and you have to be prepared to go in a different direction. One word can change the whole thing. Skyscraper was the one from Sam, introduced, oh wow, what, okay, right, look, I'm going to introduce this, and you can't refuse it. The last person said it, it's an offer, it's quite good, it was a good offer because it's specific, right, and it's not just a building, it's a skyscraper, and then we can go somewhere different with it. And it's quite, the interesting thing is that you see people go, because they really wanted it to go somewhere else. And you have to be prepared for your story, in your own mind, to go somewhere completely different. I'm going to give you very quickly a couple of brief minutes to have a go for yourselves, but it is quite fun. One word at a time on your tables. And now the first word, the first line of your story is the day we went to the zoo instead. So have a quick go, a couple of minutes on your table.
Today we went to we
Grand.
Probably.
Elephant.
Drunk.
Lion.
Broad.
New
Was.
Amazed.
Song.
Over someone.
Who?
Game.
Story.
Start using
Because.
Running.
Away.
From.
And.
Say, what did you say? About Nemo.
Losing.
Princess.
Okay, try and bring your stories to a natural conclusion and a final sentence.
I
think each one.
Okay, we'll stop there because we are running out of time. Was there any story, for any team, did the story end up in a different place other than the zoo? McDonald's, these guys ended up at McDonald's. Anything else interesting happened in your stories that you didn't expect?
Hot air balloon.
Sorry?
A hot air balloon.
Hot air balloon. Interesting, okay. You had zoo animals on a pizza. Constipating ants. That's very specific. Right? Very specific. Okay, I like it. I want to hear more about that story. But bring it back to again. How can you apply this? Where is this type of thing as a tool useful to you as a Scrum team? Listening. It's a great. Tell me more. Tell me more. What do you mean by that?
You really need to listen to what everyone's saying.
Yes.
And in order to put your word in, it's not really about what's in your head,
Yes.
about what's emerging.
Yes, exactly right. So you don't just have to listen to the previous person. You've got to be able to listen to everyone, perhaps even back to what you said, and then be able to stitch those things together to achieve flow. So it's a great way, even in daily scrums, we're generally terrible at listening in daily scrums. Because we only usually listen to the person that's just spoke before us and the person that's just spoken is about to speak after us, ourselves. So this is a great way to promote the sense of how interesting and how important, I should say, it is for listening. Anything else? How does this apply to Scrum?
We have to be willing to do the non-door aspect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same verb, yes. Filling in with the. But then the story wouldn't work. So absolutely, yes. For sometimes in Scrum teams, you're going to have to do the work that is fairly just pieces things together, or it's not particularly glorious and there's no glamour involved, but it's such an integral part of stitching together. Good. Any other examples? Or where could you give me some examples of where you could use this?
Maybe to encourage people who are less involved.
Yes.
But also they have an opinion that might not necessarily share.
Yes.
So encourages other people to say what Sam was saying, listen to what they have to say.
I use this primarily in retrospectives, I have to say. Sometimes just as a tool to get, I think it was Esther Durbin that said this, get everyone's voice in the room within the first 5 minutes. And I would just do this. Just sum up the sprint in one round. Sam ate some cheese, right? That might be it. It might make no sense. But it's everyone's had a chance to say, even if the word is cheese, I'm more likely to contribute to the rest of the meeting if I've said that word cheese in the first 5 minutes of the meeting. Yeah?
Something like that. How you apply it to, let's say, to solving specific problems? So would you say to each and everyone, how would you solve this?
Yeah, that's probably not its best application, I have to say, because it's too emergent, right? And it will probably just be nonsensical. But it's quite good for as a listening exercise, as a memory exercise, to have you remember things that have been said previously on previous days. Yeah, getting people in the room, in the zone, as a listening exercise. It's not going to be great for solving problems, I have to say that.
But how do you get those people who are usually tired, but maybe have the best solutions out there to kind of participate in it?
Well, some people are much more likely to participate if it's just one word at a time, right? And making the story something safe, like in a fictional play, fictional environment, something fun. You've got to find that right level in your team, but generally people should be able to step up for one word at a time, in that sense. It can do. You can do it with whole sentences, 2 words or 3 words at a time. Yeah. Some people, it's easier for people to steer in certain directions, but it's quite nice when with perhaps a more mature team to do that. There's some really clever stuff you can do, like in an improv sense, to improve the listening aspect. You don't have to start your sentence with the letter of the first letter has to match the last letter of my sentence.
Isn't that a drinking game?
I imagine it could quite quickly, but you have to then listen to the whole sentence before you can decide where to go next. So it forces people to listen to everything you're saying. Blah, 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 blah. You could do that in daily scrum, for example. I start my update with the last letter of your update. There's slightly different adaptations of it. I mainly use it in retrospective to sum up the sprint or to get everyone's voice ready. I'm going to try and wrap up there. There's just a couple of things I want to finish with the quotes. Keith Johnson, who I mentioned before, the thing that makes improv exciting and the thing that you've got to be prepared to help teams find is this level of uncertainty, right? That's what kind of, I heard a lot of laughter in that last one word theory game. Probably because it went somewhere that nobody thought it would, or somebody put in a word in that nobody thought they're not going to say that, but they did. Constipation, how constipation going there? We won't ask. But that's when software development becomes really exciting for teams, is when they just don't know what could be around the corner. But being able to embrace that rather than being afraid of it is quite key. A great quote from John Cleese, again a comedy actor, but he talks a lot about creativity in terms of it's not just a skill, it's not a talent that people have. I'm no more creative than anyone else, but sometimes it's just making an environment right for creativity to thrive. Right? If you put anyone in a creative, and it's very similar, John Cleese describes it, it's very similar to a classroom in a school. Right? It's about colours, it's about environment, it's about space, freedom, objects and tools for people to work with to encourage a creative space for people to work in. Just a nice one to fit the comedy. I'm a big fan of, there's a huge amount of laughter that came out of this last exercise. Doing a little bit of this in the workplace every day makes it every day a little bit easier for some people. Right? Don't be afraid to use that. It's not a waste of people's time. A laugh is not a waste of people's time. That's pretty much it. I'm pretty much done. Thank you very much for playing. In fact, there's one last thing I want you to do as you go. You can do this. Grab another sticky dot. If you can just kind of, as way of your rating session as well. Put where you are now creativity-wise on the bottom half of this, and I'll kind of photograph that and put it with my slides at the end.